And I'm doing the custom streaming service.
Okay, we're on.
Oh, what's up? What's up?
Good to go? Custom streaming service.
Okay, we're on.
Yay!
All right, so we're good to go? All right, cool. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for your patience. This is the first time we are doing a grad show week and a grad show event just like this. And we're always pushing the boundaries here at IXD. So thank you for being here and welcome to tonight's first student presentations, which is also being streamed on YouTube. Let's start by welcoming our guests. So David, do you want to go first? Tell us who you are and a little bit about where you work and everything like that.
Sure. Thanks, Luke. My name's David Grout. I'm the design director for all of the consumer-facing experiences at your lovely neighbor, Red Bull. Yeah, I've been with Red Bull going on about 5 to 6 years now, working again across all the consumer-facing sides from AR, VR to mobile apps to OTT devices and streaming services.
Great. Well, thank you for being here. Gild.
Hi, everybody. My name is Gild Copeland. I'm one of the two co-founders of Sisu. We're a digital design agency based here in Los Angeles, 4-time Webby winners, and work with a wide variety of clients ranging from DC Comics and Disney to American Express, Western Union, and the Grammys.
Cool. And then Nicole, you're here as well. Do you want to just say a quick hello?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming and supporting us. I'm Nicole Chan. I'm the IXD faculty lead.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Just a little for the people who are watching the stream, a little bit about the format for tonight. We're going to have 3 students present in a row in what we call a pechakucha. Pechakucha means chit chat in Japanese. And the format is 20 slides in 20 seconds. So it's sort of like a speed presentation. And what we're going to do is we're going to have Aaron, Gabby, and Julia go first. They're going to go through their presentations, and then we'll have some time for some feedback from our guests. We're going to do it this way. David, would you mind keeping specific eyes on Aaron and Julia? And Gild, can you keep an eye on Gabby? We ask that the feedback however you want. We'll get feedback from both of you on all students, but if you wouldn't mind paying specific attention to those students. The students will present their work. Once all 3 students are done, we'll give feedback to them, and then we will take a break. And then we have 2 other students, Marcelo and Zeph, going. But to kick us off, we're going to start with Aaron.
Hello, everyone. Let me share my screen here before I introduce myself. Can you guys all see that screen?
Yep.
Yep.
Just reload this guy. Great. Hello, everyone. My name is Aaron Guin, and I'm an interaction designer based in Los Angeles, California. Today, I would like to share with you my journey of how I got to where I am today, what design means to me, as well as how I approach my work to effectively solve meaningful problems that foster inclusivity, equity, and demarginalization. Got messed up, sorry. One more time. Okay, I think it's supposed to go 20 seconds. It's a problem with these pechakuchas. There we go. Born in Sacramento, I've lived most of my life on the West Coast, but spent a lot of my childhood moving around from place to place, from Hawaii to all over Washington and California. But I haven't traveled much outside of the US. Although those places I've been to, especially the major cities, exposed me to a fairly wide array of diverse cultures and people. When I was 11, I had visited the Art Center of Pasadena to check out the transportation design program. And as an avid car lover, this really ignited my passion for design. I loved the way transportation design was essentially art in motion, and I was really intrigued with the relationship between humans and machines. After excelling in art and math while I attended high school, I convinced myself to attend the University of Nebraska-Lincoln to study mechanical engineering. I thought it would be useful to understand how machines worked before I would design them. Within the first year, I knew this wasn't what I expected or wanted for myself. This is when I wanted to get back to my more artistic side, thinking of the days when I found joy in drawing cars and skateboarding logos, watching anime, playing video games, and listening to experimental electronic music. Graphic design aligned most with those interests while still giving me the opportunity to visually communicate fairly complex ideas. I finished out my first year at UNL, packed up my car, and drove to Los Angeles to follow my newfound dream to become a graphic designer. I was certainly on a road paved with good intentions, but it was not without its trials and tribulations. I needed a full-time job in the meantime to live in this expensive city while I studied graphic design. Enter American Apparel, where I was a logistics coordinator and was able to learn about fashion, business, supply chain, as well as the different facets of design that are involved in an in-house clothing manufacturer and global brand. Although it wasn't until my next job that I would be able to really implement what I was learning about graphic design. After American Apparel went bankrupt, I found a job as an operations manager at a small distribution company for an automotive paint, spray guns, and accessories. I was able to utilize various skills like creating marketing materials, customer acquisition, event planning, and even product design. But due to wearing many hats in a small business, I find myself overworked and unfulfilled. Still completing my graphic design degree, I found out about the Interaction Design program at SMC. When I learned about it, it appealed to me greatly because it seemed like it was a design field aimed to solve purposeful problems while also nurturing and expanding on the business skills I had already acquired while working. I needed to take additional classes to be eligible for the program, and this was when I was able to have my first experience testing with users and solving design problems beyond purely aesthetics. I had been doing it subconsciously in my day job, but it was here I could have a more methodical approach to design ideas and use qualitative research to inform them. An example of this was an online learning platform I had designed with some other classmates, which aimed to connect secondary school teachers with remote learning students in order to improve student retention and graduation rates. This project was conceived pre-COVID, but it did eventually inform a similar project I'd worked on during the pandemic. It wasn't until the program that I really learned the importance of empathy in design. One project had us find a mobility issue in a city center and design a solution. This project was where I was able to put myself in the shoes of users, for example, walking through a large shopping mall blindfolded with a walking cane, to understand the experience of visually impaired people navigating through public spaces. After conducting further extensive research, including user interviews and testing, we came up with a concept that aimed to assist visually impaired patrons by using a friendly and easy to use AI voice navigation. This concept seeks to create an inclusive navigating experience for a marginalized yet vast community. This further fueled my passion to create more of these types of experiences. When the pandemic hit, a lot of people had been feeling isolated, and our design challenge for product design was to create a solution to connect people remotely or somehow reduce that isolated feeling. After some deliberation, our group niched down further to focus on elderly people who may have already been feeling isolated. We researched and designed a soft and smart companion that would sense emotions of the user, provide specific feedback that promoted positive feelings, behaviors, and even habits like going for a walk or singing a song. Here again, I like that I not only got to utilize my UX design skills, but also my product design skills. This last fall, I had another opportunity to solve a fairly large and meaningful design problem through the Adobe Creative Jam, which was to figure out how to empower the parties involved with tackling food insecurity, improving that system, and better the nutritional value of stocked and served meals. I had heard about community fridges from a friend and wanted to figure out those issues. These fridges are often subject to fire and health codes, inconsistent inventory, and insufficient maintenance. So we designed an app concept to make these fridges more reliable for all the members of this grassroots community and organizing all the functions of the parties involved. This resulted in our concept being a top 10 finalist. Despite wanting to solve all these important issues and create a more inclusive future, I still have a strong affinity for the automotive sector, as well as other artistic outlets like photography, graphic design, drawing, and painting. So I try to apply these interests into my designs as long as they are backed by solid research. Upon graduating this June, I'm pleased to announce that I have secured an internship with Esri, a GIS software company out of Redlands, California, to be a UX architect. It's here I hope to apply everything I've learned, use my well-rounded design background to solve interesting geographical problems, and use it as a launchpad into a possible automotive UX career. Thank you all for listening, and please feel free to reach out to me on any of these outlets if you're interested in working with me, have any pertinent opportunities, or want to discuss things like automotive UX design. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aaron. That was great. Nice work. Our next designer is Gabby.
Hi. Can you guys hear me okay?
Hey, Gabby.
Sorry, couldn't find you guys. All right, everybody. I'm Gabby Castro. I am originally from Brazil, but I'm currently living in LA pursuing a career as an interaction designer. As a designer, I am passionate about designing meaningful and positive experiences with a focus on inclusive design. I know, meaningful, positive, and inclusive sounds like the right thing to say in this day and age, but I hope to show you how I incorporate these values into my design process. At the age of 11, I boarded an airplane by myself and traveled alone to a country that I had never been to, where I didn't even speak the language. You see, my mom had moved to London the previous year with the goal of providing me with a better future. I then joined her in what would become one of the most amazing and defining experiences of my life. The 5 years that we lived in London taught me a new language and culture, taught me to be open-minded, and taught me that there was more of the world to see than I had experienced in my early life in Brazil. Most importantly, the flexible educational curriculum there allowed me to discover my passion for design and technology in ways that would not likely have been possible in Brazil. After my time in London, I returned to my home in São Paulo. And as might be expected, I started to compare the differences between the two countries. The simplest tasks, like getting a bus pass, felt more challenging in Brazil than in London. I tried to understand the reasons for these differences and contemplated what might be done to fix them. I believe this is when I developed the problem solver in me and the desire to make a positive impact in the world. While I was in Brazil, I studied graphic design in college. But although I enjoyed my 2 years of pushing pixels, I realized I wanted to solve bigger problems. So I changed majors to systems development and analysis. I worked in that field for 3 years, and although I enjoyed understanding and building the architecture behind each project, I craved to be a part of the creative process of concept development. So as you can see, I have a genuine affinity for both design and technology. But at that point in my life, I hadn't yet found a way to combine my skills in those areas with my desire to solve the problems that impact people's lives. My solution to this dilemma: embark on another adventure in search of inspiration. So there I was again, getting on that plane alone, embarking on my new adventure, this time in Los Angeles. I took a variety of classes until I eventually found Interaction Design, a course of study that allows me to combine my experience as a systems developer with my design skills and my problem-solving mentality. Now I can finally say I'm certain that I have chosen the right long-term career path for me. In the IXD program, I learned about human-centered design and how I can apply that concept to make the positive changes I sought. One example is Feed My Pop, which was developed during a 2-week Adobe Creative Gem Design Challenge to address food insecurity. We learned that older adults were especially vulnerable during the pandemic, facing food insecurity and loneliness. Feed My Pop is an app that incentivizes volunteers in the neighborhood to help older adults with these issues by delivering groceries in person and even contributing monetarily towards their grocery bills. We wanted to make volunteering efforts. We wanted to make volunteering effortless. When a volunteer visits the supermarket, they could easily select a Ma and Pop's grocery list to deliver. Volunteers also had the option to add a little love by donating extra items from the Ma and Pop's favorites list. Small and yet meaningful features like these is what stood out to the judges in the challenge and resulted in us winning 3rd place in the competition. Another example of my meaningful, positive, and inclusive design values is 12 Stories. My team was challenged by the design firm IDEO and the nonprofit Beyond 12 to mobilize students to create change in their community college. However, during our research, we learned that students didn't feel connected to their college, and we struggled with how to mobilize people that don't feel connected. With that in mind, we decided that we should create a physical and digital space where students can develop a sense of belonging by sharing their stories while also helping community colleges understand students' needs in order to provide a better student experience. This project was very well received by both Beyond 12 and IDEO. And then there's WES. WES was my first IXD project, but more importantly, it was the most impactful project in terms of figuring out what I really wanted to do as a designer. WES emerged after a visit to Century City Mall, which is a large mall where even sighted people can find themselves getting lost. Sighted guests can use the mall's interactive directories to help them navigate to their desired store. These directories, however, are not accessible for a visually impaired guest, making it impossible for them to navigate the mall due to the lack of accessible wayfinding. So we conceptualized WES, a voice-guided companion. I learned a great deal from the people we interviewed. The first thing I learned was the wide range of existing visual impairment and the terms used. We tackled this design challenge by targeting our designs for the most impaired users. By doing so, we would accommodate people with lesser visual impairments as well. The second valuable lesson I learned was that as a sighted individual, I did not know how to give any directions to a blind person, nor did I have any understanding of the level of difficulties they face navigating the mall. That's why blindfolding ourselves and walking around the mall provided us with so many insights. The third and most valuable lesson I learned was the importance of co-design. The team and I struggled to find visually impaired people to visit the mall with us, and it was like designing in the dark until we found Mark. Had Mark not participated in the development of this project, WES would have been something completely different and would not have been nearly as effective in serving the needs of this group. WES, 12 Stories, and Feed Ma and Pop helped me to refine how I see the world and exemplifies the type of work I am passionate about and wish to work on as I continue to develop my skills as a designer. Meaningful, positive, and inclusive. If you share these same values, reach out and let's create together. Thank you.
All right, Gabby, that was great. Thank you so much. We should do the round of applause. And Aaron, this is for you too. Sorry, this is for going through it. Very cool. All right, nicely done. And then the last student in this section will be Julia, and then we'll go to feedback from our guests right after. But Julia, take it away.
Okay. Here we go. Okay. Hi, I'm Julia. Hi, I'm Julia Ingford. I'm an interaction designer based in LA. I'm obsessed with tangible and digital interaction design. I've always had a creative mindset and knew I wanted to work in creative. I make and create wherever I go. What excites me the most is innovative, thoughtful, and purposeful design. And who knew the letter C would get me where I am today? In grade school and still now, I struggle with memorization, writing, and exams. Where I thrive the most in school is when projects need visual and creative elements. I would build presentations, books, posters, and more. At the time, I would build these using PowerPoint, Google Slides, and Microsoft Word. Adobe was not in my life yet. In middle school, I explored costume design. Together, a volunteer parent and I, over 3 years, created 800 plus costumes for Bye Bye Birdie, Pirates of Penzance, and a steampunk-themed Wizard of Oz. I had to stay consistently creative using the drama club resources and creating costumes for the director's approval. This gave me a chance to use different mediums. I miss the tangible design element from costume design, In high school, I explored architecture. I discovered I enjoyed creating environments for people, being given a brief what the stakeholders wanted the space to be used for. I enjoyed finding what best suited the user through the flow of traffic, the use of space, and interior design. Unknowingly, this led me on the path to human-centered design. So you're wondering about that letter C, about that lowercase letter C. I was in a summer program where we created mock startups. Our company's name was Koplik, a social media marketing agency. I was the chief creative officer. This is where I created my first ever logo. A brand strategist and creative director from Silicon Valley named Fabian Gelter came to the program to assist with us CCOs with our logos. Fabian guided me to change the capital C to a lowercase c and the dot of the I to a hashtag. The lowercase c streamlined the logo, and the hashtag allowed us to hint that we were a social media agency. The change was so simple but so effective. It blew my mind, and this experience changed my life forever. This project was the moment I knew I wanted to be a designer. Over the years, I have collected and created my own archives for reference and inspiration. I collect good and bad designs, although a bad design is just another step of the iteration process. I look back on these for typography, layout, and paperweights, and the list goes on. Instead of showing you my multiple boxes of archives, these are currently some of my favorite designs that I have. One of my favorite pieces is from a Toyota Prius ad. For their 2017 model, that they advertised for, one of my favorite pieces of this is this Toyota Prius ad. For their 2017 model, advertised at the time, their new 11.6-inch screen, advertised their new 11.6-inch screen. The flyer was actually 11.6 inches big, even though they even said on the back, caution, screen is actually the size that it appears. I love that they allowed the consumer to literally visualize how big the new screen actually was. You're probably wondering why there's a stack of IKEA magazines on the screen. These are mine. I've collected them throughout the years. Yes, the 2008 magazine is from when I was 9. I have a huge obsession with IKEA. I'd rather go there than Disneyland. That's true. I like to think that IKEA is a modern day Bauhaus. I love the innovative solutions that their designers come up with. IKEA has always been current for innovative designs, from chairs that are held together by only a wooden peg and weight, sinks for small bathrooms, and they recently started integrating tech like an IoT devices, like programmable buttons, smart lights, and desks. Their products make you think, wow, why didn't I design that? Or why didn't I think of that? As you can tell, they have a pretty big imprint on me. With my love of industrial design, I have been able to explore my product design skills in a multitude of projects. In an IXD product design class, I created Brimo speakers that magnetize together to make one big boombox, or can separate and be used for surround sound, or can be separated for individual speakers. The speakers sync up to a mobile app that allow customization and settings for audio. One of my favorite materials is corrugated cardboard. I exposed the corrugation to provide a rough texture for adding grip and aesthetics. In production, I would replicate the texture of the corrugated cardboard with a rubberized plastic and make the white front a white and gray acoustic mesh. The Brimo speakers has been one of the most fun projects to mock up. When designing, I focus on the user and what they need out of this service, such as in a 2-week design sprint with Adobe Creative Jam, we were instructed to build a minimum of 15 page mobile app using Adobe XD and the Adobe Suite, with the goal of addressing food insecurities. In a team, we conceptualized ideas and approaches to the topic, along with conducting interviews with stakeholders and experts. We created an app for people to easily grocery shop to find healthy recipes and make nutritious meals. With the recipes, customers can explore and find new meals and cuisines. I created the product page that the users would search through to find the products that they want to add to their cart. Interviewing real people with food insecurities helped us build a sustainable and motivating app for those people to use. Another project that I focused on on social issues was SID. At the beginning of the pandemic, we were given the prompt: how might we ease social isolation in a way that eliminated real life social gathering? My team and I created a home scale IoT device equipped with a projector, camera, controller, and virtual games that will be used as a life-size immersive social platform to facilitate interactions between people all around the world. This project was in tandem with our IXD product design class. In our group, we chose to split into two teams, a UI team and a product design team. I was on the product design team. We came up with sketches, concepts, mockups for the device. We specifically went through a couple of iterations on the charging system and the remote, which were heavily intricate parts. My favorite part was the construction. We constructed the model out of wood because we were able to manipulate the shape however we liked. Creating the charging base was a very different story. We weren't able to separate SID from the base and properly fit it together with the time and the resources that we had. We resolved them by sketching a line separating. We resolved this by sketching out the line with a Dremel tool to simulate the two separated pieces. For the final product, we made the face of the remote a full touchscreen to allow for more UI features like a keyboard, game controller, and remote. I also curated different color waves of plastic and wood options what made SID successful was our hi-fi prototype and seamless UI design to go with it. Throughout all of these designs, focusing on the user and what they need out of the product has helped me to create innovative, thoughtful, and purposeful design solutions. I couldn't see myself doing anything else but design. If you would like to get in touch or talk more about anything that I talked about, please feel free to reach out. Thank you.
All right, Julia, round of applause. You did it. You all did it. You made it through. You're on the other side. Okay. All right, great. So what we'll do as far as format, David, if you don't mind giving feedback to Aaron, Guile for Gabby, and then David for Julia, and that can just be sort of a quick thoughts. And then after that, we'll have a chance to have a larger discussion. But David, I'll turn it over to you to start.
Sure. Thanks, Luke. Thanks, everybody. First off, it's really cool to see all your guys' creative visions showcased. So I really appreciate that. I know sometimes it could be a little weird or vulnerable when you're behind the screen or the computer and presenting. So just want to throw that out there. Aaron, do you feel, and I'm just diving right in, Aaron, do you feel like you put in too much information, or was there still information missing that you wanted to showcase?
I think I could have gone a little bit deeper on the projects and less about me and like my journey. It was just because my journey was very kind of complicated and just all over the place. So trying to just really set that up to where it's like, okay, this is where I'm at right now. It did kind of take away some time from like going in deeper into some of the projects, like for example, the way Gabby did with Wes was just so great. And I just, I wish I could have kind of structured my projects and the explanation of those projects in a similar way. That's pretty much how I felt about it.
All right. Yeah, makes sense. I think one thing that stood out to me too was your love, and obviously, I mean, I might be a little bit biased, but your love of like the automotive world and the automotive career and that side of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like you kind of touched on it at the beginning and then didn't say anything, and then you brought it back at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt like there were so many projects going on that I could never connect the dots to connect the story. Like it's fantastic to build a story around yourself, but as long as you have the different chapters that play into each other, I think that's kind of a guiding light. So I would focus more in the future on the quality versus the quantity.
Okay.
and really just pick 3 maybe, because after 3 or
Right.
even 2, I'm gonna kind of slowly start checking out of like, whoa, this is overload of info, especially over like a video conference. It can be tough versus in person when you could kind of move around and interact and that sort of
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
I thought that here, I took some notes as well. So I think the interest in the field and the interest in the different fields, you kind of talked about it, but there was no meat behind it. Like I didn't feel like you really loved any of it. I don't know if it's because it's evening time and like you might be tired, or I mean, I'm tired too. So I just wanted a higher energy because I wanted to feel like you love what you're doing. And I feel like when you're talking with someone, you can really tell and connect with what they're into based on how they kind of talk about it and react to it. Like I love design. I'm always in design. I'm always in front of my computer. I love cars. I love the shapes of the vehicles and the way that the wheels turn, and that really so you can kind of go into it, and people will start to feel that love that you're putting into your work when you're talking about it.
For sure.
Yeah. And then I thought was this whole thing supposed to be 20 seconds for each thing? Or is that my...
For each slide? Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Each slide is 20 seconds. Got it. Okay.
Pretty tough format to keep up with.
Yeah.
Especially going first.
Yeah, sure. All the pressure. But no, I thought you did really well, like going through a lot of projects. I just wish it would have been less projects and like deeper into those projects.
For sure.
Cool.
We'll
And
go
then
over... Oh, go ahead. Sorry, David.
Oh yeah, I can go for Julia, or we can have... I'm going to continue with Julia.
We'll do Guiled next, and then we'll switch back. Cool.
Thanks, David, by the way.
No problem. Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate it.
Okay. Hi. Thanks to all 3 of you, by the way. Aaron, sorry you didn't get the claps. We were trying to be all orderly, and then we realized we can. So, but Gabby, thank you. I thought, first of all, I loved that you had a good origin story. So sort of how we got there and how we got to design. I thought you told a really good story to get there, and the structure overall was excellent. I think as you had really nice, good sections to each piece. My only critique would be sort of what we were talking about a little bit with Aaron as well. You probably could have dropped a slide or 2 out of the beginning to get into your work. When you have such a small amount of slides to share, you had the repeated slide of the airplane, and probably isn't necessary. You have your lovely avatar that sort of tracked us through the entire presentation, and that's sort of a good repetitive element. And it was such a nice contrast to everything else in your story. So I don't think it was necessarily to have the plane twice, because that was sort of your person that took us through the story and was our guide. I loved how you addressed the Feed Ma and Pa app. Your work really popped out of the screen, and I think that's something that's super important for any presentation. You had a nice, cool, calm background, so that the first thing your eyes drawn to was actually the interfaces that you did. So I thought you did an excellent move there. And Wes was a great story too, and it was a mix of sort of interface and then telling the story of how you found a proper assistant. Mark, I guess, was the person's name, who helps you in terms of developing the app. It was a really good narrative, and it showed how you not only learned and how you made the project better by virtue of working with your audience and the people who the app would affect at the end of the day. So I thought that was good. Not only was that good, storytelling from the way you're speaking it, but you had good visual storytelling, even by using your little quote boxes and everything else. So overall, I thought it was really strong. A tiny bit slow at the beginning, and then the only thing that I wanted to say from a design standpoint, when you had your London slide, it just looked a little crude compared to some of the pieces that you did. Like a lot of, you had a really good composition on a lot of the slides, and the London one, it looked like you just sort of had found 3 images and dropped it in really quickly and moved on. So I would just, for something like this, think about giving enough attention to each slide, because they all matter when it's so few. But overall, good storytelling, good visuals, and thank you.
Thank you.
And just for context, Gabby asked me, should I keep all 3 of those pictures? And I was like, go for it.
Thank you,
So
Luke.
I'm gonna own that one.
It's
I was
Luke's fault.
like-
I didn't want to say it. I'm so
She
glad you said
tried
it.
to talk
There you go.
about it.
There you go.
Cool.
And I'm glad that I validated you, Gabby.
Yes,
Thank
yes,
you.
there you go. Cool. Good thing you're graduating, Gabby, from me. David on Julia.
Sure, that's a good one. Thanks, Julia, for going through things. The one statement that stood out for me from when you were kind of going through your story was bad is just another iteration of design. And that is, you said a lot of little hooks within your story that I think you could actually surface basically keep it on the surface and use those as your strings of your story. Oftentimes when you presented and you showed, I didn't really understand the lowercase letter C, but that maybe because it was a glitch at the beginning. But I didn't understand until you showed that one project. And then it kind of took me into that letter C, which stuck in my head, obviously. I thought it struck me that you seemed much more into a product design, but not in the sense of a digital product design. With the speaker and the other speaker at the end and with the remote, like cool, interesting products. And I felt like that was actually your strong suit versus the digital product design side of things. So I don't know if that's if it is, or if that's just kind of what I took from it. I think that there's a lot of little golden nuggets in the stuff that you said, like how much you love IKEA. Like those are fun, kind of relatable things. And those are what, again, I would kind of bring those up to the surface and use those as ways to relate to the audience when you're talking about it. Oftentimes too, when we're reading through things, and this kind of goes for everybody, when we're reading through, it comes off as very robotic. And I think then we lose that emotion that comes out. And so I would definitely try and go off bullet points whenever possible versus reading through, because then if you mess up, you're like, oh, wait, hold on a sec, let me go back. And then you kind of read through. I thought the projects that you did showcase were really interesting, and I liked that you kind of simplified a lot of the slides. And so that was helpful for me to kind of get a sense of what you're interested in and kind of how you present. So I would explore that product side of your mind and kind of your interest, because it seemed really promising.
Thank you. That's awesome feedback. Thank you so much.
Of course, thank you.
Cool. So we have some time just to talk about maybe where there were intersections between the projects. And one of the themes that came up in all 3 was that transition, right, that we've all been going through to designing for the pandemic and designing socially. So I was wondering for our guests, like, sort of, what did you think of those projects? What do you think about that practice? How do you think about sharing that as part of why we're doing this is sharing a design practice, telling those stories and the value of telling those stories.
Yeah, I think if I could jump in. I think the value of it is huge, especially around, obviously accessibility is so important with the products that we're putting out today. It's a ton of value in showcasing that. I would just simplify what is talked about within those projects, just like bullet point it for me as someone who's kind of taking in the information. It's easier if I could just get a sense with a couple of bullet points, and then you could kind of explain and talk about it more.
Yeah, I was really struck by the food insecurity apps actually, and all the work that that the 3 of you did. I thought, being in Los Angeles and witnessing all the hard times that a lot of people had, that really hit home to me. And I know this is truly just by luck that you all were on different projects, but it was cool to see the 3 different as well. So I think that's being able to do purpose-driven work sometimes. I think it gives you a little more room to explore, like you're not just trying to replicate some product or service that's out there already. So I think that's I like it as a vector to follow. And obviously that's the kind of thing that can evolve and stay relevant in future years with different efforts, right?
Is there, for this group, is there anything that stood out or surprised you that you maybe weren't expecting from any of these projects, or anything that you'd say was memorable, that you'd say, hold on to that, that was a good, +1 to that?
Say Julia's product, real life product, around the speakers, I thought was interesting. But one specific thing that I would hold on to is coupling your explanation with the research behind it is always massively important, and it gives the background to an onlooker or a viewer as to why you're doing it. So you might love, Aaron loves automotive design, but now he's doing this food app. You have to find that connection and that emotion within what you're doing that brings out why you're doing the food app above and beyond any sort of accessibility or purpose design. Like, what's the mission that connects with you? Because that's what I connect to.
2 bits from my side. Just first of all, I thought that the 3 of you had distinct presentation styles, and there was something great that I think you all should hang on to. Aaron, I thought you had a really calm, clear delivery style. Like, it was really easy to understand what you were saying, and like we could just sit in it, and there was, we could follow along really well. Gabby, I talked about yours already. Like, you had really good structure to your storytelling, and Julia, your love, your joy and creativity in the creative process was evident from the 3rd slide we were on, and that followed through the whole way. So that's really special. It makes you distinct speakers, and sometimes that takes people years to get to. So I thought that was all very well done. And then on the sort of the backside of what David was saying, I think something that's important for any presentation is establishing the challenge that you've been presented with or that you have to fix, and then showing people the solution that you came up with, and finding that sort of, X then Y kind of step, because I think that helps people follow along with what you're doing.
One other question, and it sparked when I saw this picture that Aaron had in one of his slides, where there was like someone breathing fire off a car, and I was like, Aaron, did you take that picture? And he's like, yeah. And you think you know someone, and then they do stuff that are clearly passions of theirs. And I just wanted to hear from both of you as hiring managers and people in industry, the value of sharing those passions that you have as part of an interview, or as part of a larger portfolio. What advice or thoughts do you have around that? Because that was something that I thought was just a really cool thing that he does. So I was glad that he shared it. So
Gil, do you want to take it?
Sure. Yeah, I think what's really tricky is that when you get you put out a job posting and there's a bunch of resumes, you need to come across with the things that make you, that are formative to you in some way, shape, or form. And that's going to help build a connection to your potential employer, the person you're interviewing with. And if you can find ways to connect to that person in a unique way, then you're getting some extra steps towards that job. Actually, it's very funny, Aaron, when you brought up the Nebraska logo. My wife went to Nebraska for a year and left as well. So I was like, oh hey, something to talk about there. Or it could be the fire breathing dude on a truck, which obviously connects to Luke. So, but all that being said, I actually think there's really value in those those 2 or 3 little lines where you actually get to say something other than just the work you've done, because it gives it really fleshes out your personality in a way that a piece of paper has a hard time doing.
Yeah, I definitely would second that in terms of what Gil was saying. And for me, purpose and passion are some of the utmost important things when talking with individuals. And I'm a little bit, I would say, I've been told, unorthodox with when I'm talking to other individuals and kind of looking for that talent. because the work will speak for itself. You know, it's up on the site, it's in your portfolio, that's great. I can take that in, but really that human connection, you know, knowing that's the person I'm going to be working with, I'm going to be talking to on a daily basis as a hiring manager, as a team member, you know, we're forming a team. So you have to have purpose, you have to have passion, you have to have some direction, and you have to have an opinion. And those are four key things that I always look for, because that's what builds a unique team. You know, the different opinions, the different backgrounds, that's what kind of connects us all as humans.
Great. And to close out this section, I'll give each of you the last word. Any thoughts, suggestions, advice, feedback, anything before we take our break for this group?
I think we've sort of wrapped it in for the most part. Yeah, small things, but I think David had touched on a couple of things that I had as feedback for Julia and Aaron. But overall, I think they're very strong presentations.
Yeah, thanks everybody for, like I was saying at the beginning, for presenting. And you know, just think about how you can make that complexities or the complexities simple and really bring a thread through your story. And that's what I think you can, you know, come away with. But otherwise, you guys did a great job.
Okay, great. So
Agreed.
we're going to take a break, and that literally means turn off your screen, go get some water, go get some coffee. For those of you who are watching, we'll be back in 5 minutes, so right around 7:55, and we'll go with our next two speakers, Marcelo and Zeph. All right, so see you back.
klærne. Fugler synger i det fjerne. Holder jevnt 55. Det er mer enn nok og plenty. Jeg har ingen minnetid. Siste trikken går forbi. Tempoen suser i det fri. Jeg synger denne melodi. Jeg kjører høy fart med mopedbart. Jeg har ikke klokke på.
All right. It was a short 5 minutes, for sure. So cool. Well, welcome back everyone to our first live student webinar presentations. We started a little bit late, so we gave that group an extra a couple minutes to catch up. And for the second half, we've added another guest. So Dee, welcome. Could you do a quick introduction and thank you for being here.
Hi, so sorry I was late and missed the beginning. We just moved into a new home and the internet is now officially working. But hey, cohort 1 alum, happy to be here. I don't know, same old same. I still just run my own little small studio here in LA, do everything from research, design, marketing, all that jazz. Happy to be here.
Great. So cool. So for this second part, we're gonna have Marcelo and Zeph and David. If you and Dee could focus on Marcelo, and Gild, if you could focus on Zeph, that would be great. So and we'll do the same format as before. So Marcelo will go and then Zeph. Marcelo, take it away.
Okay, can you hear me all right? Awesome. All right. Okay. Hi, my name is Marcelo Leera. I am an interaction designer with a multidisciplinary background. Currently, I'm based out of Venice, California, but I was born in South America with some stops in between. This is me painting when I was a little kid. My mom took this while we were living in South America. She was an ICU nurse from New York, and my dad was a professor from Chile. They met while she was in the Peace Corps. So creativity, inquiry, and helping people. These precursors influenced who I am as a designer today. This isn't what I was painting in the photo. It's from The Little Prince. The narrator's frustrated that adults don't understand his drawings. He writes, "My drawing was not a picture of a hat. It was a picture of a boa constrictor digesting an elephant. Making sense of the world isn't easy. Finding your place in it is even harder." My family moved around a lot while I was growing up, so I was always the new kid. But being an outsider helped shape me into a focused observer of systems and social environments. Of course, childhood survival skills eventually become adult soft skills. And I learned that new ideas and inspiration can be found in unexpected places. After finishing high school, I studied fine arts and I apprenticed under a master jeweler. I launched my own collection and I married a talented photographer. We were self-employed, so I started helping her, and eventually it became a full-time endeavor. Running a small business was a crash course in technical adaptability. During this period of my life, I also created my own photographic artwork, which has been shown widely through online outlets for emerging artists, and I've been published in some photo books. Through photography, I was able to observe and investigate in a manner of speaking, but I was still on the outside looking in. Then I found out about SMC's Interaction Design program. Before applying, I took graphic design, UX, and motion graphics classes. Making and working visually wasn't new to me, but design thinking was. Here were the missing pieces I'd been looking for all along. Here was a process for creating while addressing people's needs. I was able to use my research-driven approach to problem solving to develop a smart companion robot for seniors struggling with loneliness. We were inspired by looking at sensory toys, expeditionary behavior, current psychology, and of course, companion animals, all of which pointed to positive and meaningful rituals as a potential solution. The pandemic meant that hands-on maker classes I was so excited to take wouldn't be held in person. So instead of using 3D printing to make a tangible model, I got to learn how to use 3D modeling software so I could help bring our concept to life. Another lesson from this project was that sometimes an app isn't the only answer. For another project with Activision, we were asked to create engaging social features for the Call of Duty companion app. Call of Duty is a notoriously difficult to learn video game, and Activision's own player research pointed to how rare it is to connect with strangers. So we ended up pitching a new player recruitment tool for players to use together. We designed an onboarding experience that could fit into their stats-heavy companion app. We looked into motivating users with achievement badges, and during testing, it turned out that some players really wanted to use the badges to size each other up for compatibility. A small but impactful testing insight that led us to modify our prototype. Recently, I was part of a project called 12 Stories, which we created for a service design class. We were asked to mobilize community college students in order to redesign their educational experience. After conducting interviews with students and other school stakeholders, we began to question whether it was really right to ask them to do so much. Community college students don't feel like they fit in, and they're reluctant to ask for help. During a team meeting, we shared stories with each other about how we were coping with pandemic-driven stress. It brought us closer together and alleviated some of the negative feelings we were experiencing. We wondered if we could recreate this experience for other students. So we used Google Jamboard to create a low fidelity prototype. We provided the students with a series of questions, and they were able to respond in real time anonymously. We also gave them the ability to interact with each other's stories by adding support icons. Afterwards, they described the exercise as empathy building. The students also told us that they wanted the school to hear their concerns. This validated what we were brainstorming, a platform for students to share their stories and form a supportive community. Sharing with each other helps students feel like they belong. Sharing student narratives with the school gives voice to their needs. Audrey Tang, Taiwan's digital minister and a leader in civic engagement, talks about establishing positive societal norms through design choices. For me, that meant aggregating clicks on popular topics, but not showing clicks or the absence of clicks on individual stories, putting the data to good use while protecting student self-esteem. During research, I remembered the Obama administration tried to implement idea jams, crowdsourcing ideas and voting for the best ones. The effort was ultimately deemed a failure because, as Bob Pearson of Dell said, after listening and implementing ideas, they failed to go back into the community and tell them what they had accomplished. So we organized the data into an affinity diagram and shared it with faculty for feedback. They felt that a student-curated artifact would be a powerful tool to drive change at the college. And in order to close the transparency loop, success stories would need to be highlighted on 12 Stories. We also envisioned a digital time capsule to enshrine them. So what else did I learn while making 12 Stories? Listening to our users led us to reframe the design question. The entire project hinged on uncovering the underlying needs of our target users. And it turned out that by solving for their unmet needs, we were also taking a vital step towards meeting the original challenge. Now that I'm nearing the end of my studies at Santa Monica College, have I made sense of the world? Well, I'm still trying, but I found a space where I fit in, a space full of other people that value creativity and knowledge and helping people through their design choices. Thanks for listening.
All right, well done. Great work, Marcelo. Thank you for sharing that. And then Zeph, if you could take us home.
All right. So it's interesting going last because a couple of my team members have already gone and they've talked about some projects. So I switched gears. So this will be interesting. Oops. Hi, my name is Zeph, and this is my brain. or rather, these are my thoughts splattered all over an application called Miro. I don't think linearly, and I don't believe the world can or should be divided into confining boxes and placed into rigid little columns. Life is messier, more complicated than that. But my research as a sociology student at Berkeley showed me that if I zoom in and look close enough, I can begin to see strands of connections that can be woven into meaningful stories. There are always things that aren't too surprising, like the connection between Goffman's idea of the fluid self and how Instagram filters can blur the very idea of authentic. But sometimes the connections are unexpected, like this one. That's Jen, and this is definitely one connection I wasn't expecting. We met while teaching English in Korea. 3 years later, we were married, which was funny to both of us because we had spent our lives railing against the institution of marriage. And to top it off, Jen proposed to me. So yeah, very unexpected. Before the proposal, we had created more connections through an 8-month trek around China and Southeast Asia, traveling with nothing but a 35-liter backpack and someone I had known for only a year. We didn't know it at the time, but we were slowly weaving the story of us. We learned 2 very important lessons about our relationship on that trip. 1, relationships are not about avoiding conflict, but about working through them together. And 2, it's good to build in rest days and create some art. This is one of the projects I created on that trip. We had bought blank books and some basic art supplies at a local shop and filled them with our thoughts along with collages and interactive elements like pop-ups and pull-downs, because life is interactive. It's my attempt to weave our Cambodian trip experience into a book, into a story. I've always loved books and the stories they contain. A few years back, I experimented with some bookbinding of my own. I made these from found materials like cigar boxes, donated leather, and elements from magazines and other books. So they all have their own unique history and character. And like our own lives, they remain powerful vessels for storytelling. This is a book too. It's a story about my relationship, influenced by the vintage theme of our wedding photos. That's an old box camera I gutted and altered to mimic a stereoscope for our wedding slides. The camera manual was turned into a chronology of our early history, and I aged our Korean and travel photos. I love these types of experimentation and storytelling. It's what brought me to design in the first place. All of these designs, they were about solving problems, the adventure of looking for possible connections. I love that design provides me the opportunity to seek out information that I can then weave together into meaningful solutions. But the most meaningful stories for me come from connecting with people, like the director of SMC's Sustainability Center, who wanted to redesign without any green or elements typically associated with environmentalism. I was confused. How would his target audience make the connection? So I went over there to listen to his story. 40 minutes into it, he finally proclaimed, "I'm just tired of preaching to the choir." Those are the insights I wait for as a designer. I spent the next few days creating a story, not for environmentalists, but for college students, a story about the possibility for student connection, filled with bright colors and bold graphics, with text and images about creating with others. Creating a better world, sure, but also creating connections and community. Design can do amazing things. It's a very powerful tool. We need to be cognizant of that power. I didn't design this, but I like how it reminds me of what in sociology is called positionality. We all occupy a position, viewing the world through our own unique lens. It's important for me to remain aware of how my own story, my own perspective affects the stories I tell, and that mine isn't the only story. I turned away from graphic design and toward interaction design because of its focus on listening to the people our designs directly impact. And yet, when we attempt to explain UX design to others, we like to show things like these high fidelity prototypes. And don't get me wrong, I'm very happy with how these prototypes turned out, but they failed to show why I was drawn to interaction design in the first place. This is what interaction design looks like to me. It's about going into the field to directly listen to the stories of the people we're actually designing for. It's full of interviews, storytelling, and prototypes made out of paper, cardboard, and sticky notes. All of the things I loved about sociology, traveling, and making my own books. It's messy and it's complicated. But when I look and listen close enough, I begin to find strands of connections that I can then weave into artifacts like personas, user flows, and wireframes. Artifacts that remind me of who I'm creating meaningful interactions for. Artifacts that help guide the design process for our team. And for me, those interactions don't stop with websites and mobile apps. They also include interactions at stores, banks, and museums, and they include interactive displays as well as new digital tools, all of which I've recently found to be more interesting than web and app design. This is Naval, a cultural organization in downtown LA. In early 2020, I joined one of their experimental learning groups. In it, we reflected on our relationship to the digital, including 3D, AR, VR, and other immersive technologies. Although COVID prevented us from meeting in person, our digital Zoom box selves did assemble every 2 weeks for 3 months, which became an essential connection for many of us during that time. I attempted to capture those connections in a 3D sculpture for a virtual exhibit we held at the end of those 3 months. This is the space we built in Mozilla Hubs to document our time together. In the bottom left image, you'll see that cubed 3D sculpture I mentioned. And then on the right, you can see a walkthrough of that same sculpture. As you move through the cubes, you hear a dial-up connection, while you're also seeing the varying human connections we experienced during our group discussions. I've been able to experiment further along these lines within the IXD program itself. On the left is In Plain Sight, which is a digital physical display using Arduino and processing as an informative tool to talk about the monuments that fell in 2020. The image in the center is an AR stat filter I call the center itself, and on the right is an experiment with machine learning. These new tools are already affecting how we interact with the world, how we connect with one another, how we view ourselves, who gets left behind. That's a lot of power, which reminds me of positionality, which is why it's more important than ever that we go into the field to directly listen to the stories of the people we're actually designing for. And that's why I'm a researcher and interaction designer. My name is Zephyr Swart, and these are some of my stories. For more stories, you can visit me at zephyrswart.com. Thank you.
All right, that was awesome. So really nice work. I'll turn it over to our guests. So David and Dee, if you want to talk about Marcelo's work first.
Dee, you're always so good. You can have.
I mean, I can start. I don't have a lot of critique, and I'm super exhausted from my move. I was like crying. So good. I thought it was great. It was interesting listening to the feedback from the other ones, and they were talking about what it was to like make this connection to the things that you love, to like what you're doing now. And you did such a good job at that because, you know, sort of feeling like an outsider, it's so, you know, specific to that person, but it's also something that like we've all sort of felt at some point. And so it's so personal to you, but it's also something that you can really connect with other people on. So like nailed that. Ritual companion. I have multiple people in my life that I immediately just connected. I was like, oh my God, that's exactly what they need. And I just, yeah, I loved your ideas. I loved your aesthetic. I'm like a taste snob, and everything that the way you presented it, the slides you used showing the photography in the beginning and the art that you did, to the way you displayed your projects. I mean, I was just completely impressed. I really loved, you know, you didn't reference, I like the way you referenced your research. I think there could have been like a couple more. I really like, Zeph did a really great job, like really nailing in the point of how the research, how impactful it is. But I did love that when you were talking about the onboarding for the video game that I should remember, you know, you said it's small, but in fact, small but impactful finding, which to me is usually how it always works, right? It's like you never see it coming, and then there's just like this really small detail that usually makes a huge difference. And so I like that you pointed that out. And yeah, I put this validated what we were feeling. Sometimes I love to hear. Oh, okay. Yeah. So you kept talking, you were talking about how something that you did in research validated you. And I put something here. It's like, I'd love to hear how something like didn't go the way you planned. But then right after that, you were talking about the Obama administration and how that was like a failure. But so you sort of got me there because you did. I mean, you didn't do it for your own thing, but I like that you sort of pointed out how that does tend to happen. But overall, I don't have a lot of critiques because I was like totally blown away, really impressed, really excited to see what you do next, and really happy I was here to see that.
Thank you, Dee.
Yeah, just to add on to Dee's, there really wasn't much critique that I would have on it. I thought it was really, really well done. I would say the one part where you started to lose me was it felt like the 12 stories was really long compared to everything else. And I would have loved to have you shorten that and shorten that little, it almost felt like hey, I need to fill up some time, so I'll kind of dive into it more. Whereas I would have rather just kept it short like the rest of them, because I was easily able to follow along like the entire story. It felt really nice, felt very organic. So that would be the only critique, would really just actually shorten the 12 stories part.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, David.
Cool. And then we'll transition over to Kyle.
Cool. Well, Zeph, that was great. That was like the magical realism of Pechakucha. You know, it was such a good story the whole way through. Um, you know, from the first line, you know, you're capturing people's attention, and it was wonderful. It was human. It was lyrical. So, no, I thoroughly enjoyed the whole thing. Um, I thought you showed, you know, humility in terms of uh, you know, what you've learned and what you're still learning, and where you want to grow, and obviously sort of showed your truth. It was almost like a manifesto of sorts, and so I thought it was excellent, you know, across the board, and your storytelling is very, very strong as well. If I had to be snarky, it would be, I don't know if part of the requirement was to show more of the work and the projects that you did with SMC, and if so, you know, you were telling a very, very good story, and that didn't seem to fill in. But at the same time, your understanding of the craft was very clear. So it would be on notes. It would be like, you know, if a figure skating judge was trying to be, you know, tough on you for some apparent reason. But overall, I just thought it was an excellent presentation, uh, and even being able to educate people about, you know, positionality or whatever else is just not something that a lot of people think about. I enjoyed it. I I wish I had, you know, I'm trying to come up with things to be critical about, but I mean, I thought the lockups were good. I thought you moved through it with pace. Integrating some motion in a pretty seamless way was a nice touch as well. So sorry for not being more critical. My apologies.
That's not a problem. So I'll open this up to the floor. You know, I'll sort of start with the same one. Was there anything that a moment or a line that really stood out as memorable that you would say, hey, hold on to that, because that's, you know, part of, you know, when we go for job interviews or we tell our stories, it's about part of it is about memorability. So is there anything that stood out for the three guests that was memorable from either presentation?
I mean, Zeph, you crushed that thing. Absolutely crushed it. Not to add to that, but Marcelo, what stuck with me with yours was, believe it or not, actually the very beginning when you were talking about your mother and father and kind of how that came into what built you and kind of where that perspective comes from. That always sticks with me.
Yeah, for Marcelo, I thought there were sort of three things that really caught my attention over the course of the presentation. I really liked your sort of nicely designed when you showed the different places you'd been in the world. Like it was a nice way of showing where you'd been in a way that was very personal. Like you'd clearly crafted that. That wasn't something you'd found anywhere else, and I think that's always good, right? It's a customization like that. When you were talking about Call of Duty and you touched on the badges as a way to find connection, that was a way to show the value of that particular project. And 12 Stories, when you had sort of you talked about how there was learnings and value then to the administration about how you wanted to bring in success stories. Like those were the three pieces that I thought really added extra value to those little case studies or pieces of your story. So I'd hang on to those.
Thank you. Here you go.
I agree with everything they said. And then just with Zeph and sort of what I was talking about before, that I wanted to see just like a little bit more in Marcelo's, was just like really talking about the importance of our users or people in general. And I know it seems so obvious, here we are, but I am constantly still trying to advocate for what we do and explain this to people. And I've had people talk to me about how thoughtful they are about the user's experience. I'm like, cool, like who'd you talk to? It's like, oh no, but we were just so thoughtful about all the details. Like, yeah, but who'd you talk to that like is actually going to be doing this? And so I think, going into hiring and into this field, it's very clear how important people are to you, and then being able to see your artifacts and examples of that, I love to see, and very memorable. So, but again, I echo what the other two said as well.
One question for our guest is, how do you rate vulnerability in an interview or when you're meeting people, or that ability to share versus sharing too much? It's a very fine line, but it's also what separates us from other folks. So if anyone had any sort of, where's that line for you all, and the emotion in talking about things like love and etc.
So I'm just going to speak to that, because I think the only thing I'm going to say is that certain things could, for lack of better words, trigger somebody. And so you want to make sure you're keeping it relatively professional and including certain details about yourself. Again, origin stories of your family, and, touching on relationships that you have now and the importance of them. But certain details of personal lives will either relate or completely not relate to somebody. And in very unexpected ways, it could evoke some emotion out of that person. So try not to get too into, like, I don't know. I think I've made my point. It's just, you never know what somebody else's experience is and what telling yours is going to draw up in them. And so try to keep it pretty, at least in the beginning. If we're talking about like a job interview or something like that, like, it's really good you're a pure person, you have relationships and stories, but there is a line.
Yeah, I think what Dee's saying, I would agree with, in the sense that you don't want to go 0 to 100 right when you meet somebody. It's kind of like if you're meeting someone you're interested in, you don't just, rush over and do something that would freak them out, but you at least want to provide little hints and kind of these little breadcrumbs that could potentially open up doors to somebody else. So just don't go 0 to 100. It's like peeling back an onion, right? You're not just slicing into the center of it. Just kind of keep peeling back the layers, and that'll kind of grow the relationship organically too.
I'll take this from a slightly different tack, which is just actually something I've seen in interviewing people for a lot of years, is when people talk about professional failures, when they're meeting, everyone's had one, but it's a question of sort of how you weave it into a story where at the end, of course, it's a happy ending, or you've learned something from it, or you make a project better. And what I've been interviewing people where they talk about a professional failure, but they don't actually resolve so much like what they got out of it, as opposed to it was just like a traumatic experience, or like a challenging experience in some way. And it's a good story. I think when it's in an interview, actually, you have to talk about how you built upon that tough time, not just that you survived it and you made it to that interview on a given day. So I know it's a slightly different tack from what the question was, but it is something I've seen more than once over the last number of years. So just want to throw that out there.
Great. So we're right up at time. I will throw it out to any of the our presenters, our students. Is there anything that you're curious about or wanted to follow up with while we have our guests here? Zeph, I'm seeing a smile. I'm seeing you're reaching towards
if there's a pause, I'm gonna unmute myself. Well, okay, but first I want to go back to what Dee was talking about, because I did have a question about that. Like some of the things that I talked about, I talked about my marriage and some of my travel and stuff like that. Do you think that was like a little too much for somebody, especially since I did front load that at the beginning? Or are you talking about going a little bit farther than that?
I think, both with you and Marcelo, I felt like personal attachments at certain point that like you can't control, right? Like he doesn't know I have sick elderly parents. You don't know I have a failed marriage. Again, vulnerable here, but I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like there are these kinds of things that like you can never anticipate how somebody's going to say it. And like I would never, because of my personal experience, not want to hear somebody else's. It's just at what depth they do it and how they connect it to what they're telling about. And so I have experienced it. Like I have maybe not like overshared with somebody, but I've gotten reactions from people, or because I'm an oversharer. And so I'm sort of like cautionary tailing also. But I mean, it's just, you also can't control what everybody thinks and feels. But I really like what David said about the, you know, the onion peeling, because, you know, you are you, and there's a lot of different opportunities to tell different parts of yourself. But I do not think you did. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was wonderful.
All right.
Feature too, Zeph, there's context, and you were here to share with us. So we were coming into the experience with the expectation to hear a story from you about your work and about you. So I was prepared for that. It's different than like, you know, I've had interviews with people where they do come in and they overshare and you're like, whoa, that was a lot. Like maybe if I started working with you 6 months down the line after we have lunch together every day, I'm willing to hear that from you, right? So with this event in this context, your story, and you weaved it into your work, and you as a human and as a designer and as an artist, it was like a beautiful masterpiece, which is different than like walking into an interview and giving way too much information, you know, which we sometimes just do automatically. Like we kick ourselves. We're like, why did I say that? Just different situations. So I don't think you're there.
Okay, that's helpful.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to like bounce over to David for a second, because, you know, the first half of this, when you started giving some critique, I have to say, honestly, when we had the break, I had a little bit of a panic because I revamped mine. I talked about 12 stories a lot in mine. And because, you know, Gabby talked about 12 stories and Marcelo talked about 12 stories and went right after Marcelo, I was like, you know what, I'm going to show a couple of other things. And it became, like, I think one of the comments you made was, you know, pick a couple of projects and then go deep into them. And I felt like I showed a lot of stuff, but I didn't go deep into a particular project. And 12 Stories did, and I think Dee brought this up about she wanted that moment where you had that frustration and how you could have it. We had that moment in 12 Stories, which was basically, we couldn't figure out how to solve the problem for Beyond 12, because all our students were telling us they didn't feel connected to the campus. So how can you convince students to then want to make change at something they don't feel connected to? And so we were like, do we just go ahead and try to solve for that issue, even though are we ignoring the brief? How do we tie the things together? It was a blocking point for us. But to David, you know, like, so where does it get to that place where what I said and what I talked about was interesting to you, even though I didn't really dive deep? Because in an interview, obviously I would be going through the process, you know, like I would have everything and then go step by step. But in this particular thing, I felt like I was, I didn't go to those depths to really show you one particular project.
Yeah, totally makes sense in terms of, you know, the difference of what I was saying before versus your strategy with what you presented. And I would say it comes down to that, to where you decided to make a right turn instead of go down the left side. And that was a gamble, but I think it paid off. And to be honest, I would do that in an interview over showcasing your work. And so it's really just comes down to when you choose to do something, you're making that choice, and you got to stick with that and don't try and do both, right? You want to do one thing and stick to it and do that one really well versus trying to jump back and forth. So if you kind of started going down a story path and then all of a sudden you kind of started doing like case study reviews, then it would have gotten disjointed. But if you're going down the case study review, then there's certain critique and kind of certain things that would stand out versus a little bit more of a storied approach, which was, you know, obviously 100% the storied approach of yours with skimming the surface of things. And so that's what differentiates it for me, is just a completely different strategy of how you're presenting.
Okay, that helps. Thanks.
We are unfortunately right at time, so I wanted to give our guests one last chance to share anything that you learned tonight, that you felt tonight, advice that you might have. And we'll start with Guile, then we'll go Dee, and then David. That's how you're positioned on my computer. So
Sure. I think we said my piece, but congratulations to all of you. That is the most trying of senior years, and I'm sure it wasn't the one you expected. So I think you all produced excellent work from what we got to see in this brief 90 minutes. So congratulations to that, and good luck. And if there's some way that I can be of help as a resource, find me on LinkedIn or through Luke or Nicole, of course. And yeah, great work overall. And I feel honored to have been able to witness it today. So thanks.
Dee?
Oh, I'm just so happy I was here and got to see that. I know it was so late. I'm so sorry, but I was totally blown away. I would just encourage everybody to just be like unapologetically yourself. I mean, be professional, but just really only do what you really want to do. There's no reason in doing anything else. So just stay very true to yourself. And then to his same point, I am always here as a resource. I have hired out of the program. I've had other people hire out of the program. I am here to help. I'm here as a resource. And absolutely just love that I still get to be a part of this program. And it's been an honor. So thank you.
Yeah, just to echo the words, super thankful, super grateful to be here. Thanks, Luke. Thanks, Nicole. It's really always an honor to see the students and see all your creative minds and kind of see where you guys go with certain things. So I really appreciate it. And also, of course, you can reach out to me at any time, LinkedIn, Nicole, through Luke. Always happy to help, have a chat, brainstorm, whatever it might be. So thank you guys.
cool. And on that note, let's thank and show our appreciation for our guests. Thank you so much for your time. These are the big supporters of the program and have been consistent from the beginning. And we'll end with a big round of applause for our student presenters. You made it, you did it, and you did a wonderful job doing it. So congratulations. And make sure
Well
to
done.
thank your
Congrats.
partners,
Thank you,
pets,
thank you,
friends, and
everyone.
family for getting you
Thank
through
you for the
this.
feedback. It was
Good.
very helpful.
Really
Thanks,
appreciate it.
guys. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Really
So we'll see you
appreciate your
tomorrow
time.
night. Nicole will be moderating, and we're coming back for round 2 tomorrow night on YouTube. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you then. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Ciao.
All right.
Good night.
Thank you.